Here's a Gemara, yeah? We'll wait 2 more minutes. We're ready.
Yeah, whenever you're ready.
Start on, like a little after the time.
Mishnah Baruch Bob. Whatever.
Thank you very much. Thank you. We'll start in 2 minutes. 45. Still coming.
Okay. Whatever you say. You're more
You know when they,
more dazzler.
you know when they say Rabbi Gelderus went to interview, he went to interview Rav Breuer. So they told him you got to be on time, and he got there like a minute early. So he rang the bell. Rav Breuer. So they said, yeah. Rav Breuer said, "Zu früh ist echt nicht in Zeit."
Do you have the old Fuss Mishnah Berurah?
Oh,
the regular one, yeah.
The regular.
I'll leave it here in case you don't get the other one. We'll use this. Please, sorry. More psochim. More psochim. Mishnayos Megillah.
Oh, Mishnayos, the Mishnayos.
Yeah, they have a Reb Kvega, with a Reb Kvega.
Regular Mishnayos, not moving away. It's Megillah. Must be Moyed Beis.
Oh.
Sedom mevak shetera. Ich sag Sedom mevak shetera.
Yeah, unbelievable. You're a big schos. How come they didn't make it back in Halberstadt?
Because he has no one there to take care of it. So I told him, I'll take care of it. I can't take care of it there. It's his Shiur still, capital. That's why.
I have to call him.
You got to work. I'm willing to say, have take it back. No, with Rebbe Kivagi, this has it.
This has it, yeah. Okay. Very good. Okay, we're ready to go?
Okay. Baruch Hashem. Here for Susateira Motzei Shabbos. Just want to be Magdish this Shiur V'zeich Nishmas Chavereinu Yedideinu Rabbi Yankiv and Rabbi Yosef Shleimer Chaynu Levracha we had this week. Monaslan here in the shul, the Balkair of the shul. So I want to be Magdish this Shiur L'Zichrai. It should be an Aliyah V'Yishama, the Luminateva. It was here by some of the Shiurim. And all of us together, the Torah should be making a matzel. She'll learn, especially this extra Torah that we're here, Motzei Shabbos. So I want to introduce Mori V'Rabbi, Basch to Yomi.
Well, covered again to be back in the Daf Yomi Shiur, Daf Yomi B'Iyun. Also, Shus the Mordasra, Talmud Yeshiva Seinu, Teretz Mima, and the first Talmidim that we're very, very proud of. Became himself a tremendous Marbetz Torah and a Rav. And it's chutz to speak here in the shul. I want to speak on the Inyan, נשים chayaves b'kriyas Megillah. The Gemara will go back a little bit from last week and some of it the coming week. The Gemara says in Daf Dalid, V'omer Rabbi Shiur ben Levi, נשים chayaves b'mikra Megillah. Daf Dalid Amar Aleph. Rabbi Shiur ben Levi says נשים are required in mikra Megillah. Shaf hey moi bois anes. Pshat in the Gemara is that we know in the mitzvah the Raisa, נשים apota, like sukkah, lulav, נשים apota. My matzah are only chayav because there's a special hekesh to chometz. But the rule is that in a mitzvah eshman groma נשים apota. And there's another klal that rabbanan tikkun kein the Raisa. So Megillah is a mitzvah midrabanan. But on that also it applies, it's applicable, the din of mitzvah eshman groma. So why should נשים be mechuyev? So the Gemara says there's a special reason. Because afhei mei b'is hanes. Since they were b'is hanes, they were saved, they were also in the Gzeira lahashmin laharig, we'll see in Taisvis. So therefore, they were mechuyev in Megillah. And we'll see this klal of Afim Moisanes also applies to Chanukah, the Noshim Achayev and Adlokas Neiris and Chanukah, and also applies to Dalet Kaisis. The Maram Sochem Daf Kuf Ches, that Noshim Chayovos and Dalet Kaisis Shafim Moisanes. So there's a Taisus here that would Pashtas be mashma, Taisun Daf Dalet, Divrei Maskal Noshim. Noshim Chayovos b'Mikra Megillah, Mikan mashma she'anoshim moitzios esacher midei chavosim. From here would be mashma that Noshim can be moitzi, even a man. Middle lekama lishmoya Mikra Megillah. Because it doesn't say Noshim Achayev to hear the Megillah. It says Noshim Amachuyev and Mikra Megillah. We all know that the Chiyav of Megillah is to learn the Megillah. What bracha that we make is Asher K'Shanim Esvayso Yitzvano Al Mikra Megillah. So it says over Noshim Chayovos Mikra Megillah. From that would be mashma that women have the same Chiyav as men, and therefore they can be Maitzi men. V'Achi Nami Mashma Be'erchen, and that's mashma in the Erchen. That says there's a Mishnah later in Daf Yutesam at Beis, you'll soon learn. Hakol Ksherim Likros HaMegillah. Everybody's kosher to lay in the Megillah chutz michayer shayt v'kotten. So the Gemara says Masik Hakol Ksherim Lasuya Mai. Who does Hakol Ksherim come to include? Shani Lasuya Noshim. That everybody can lay in the Megillah except chayer shayt v'kotten. That would mean a woman can lay in the Megillah also, and that would mean that a woman can be mitzi a man pashtus. So we see a woman can be mitzi a man. The kosher, though, but Tosefta, Tos says in Tosefta, it's mashma there clearly that a woman cannot be mitzi a man in Kriyas Megillah. Though, but Tosefta Tani Behedya, Tumtum ein mitzi lo yasminoi v'lo yashein aminoi. A tumtum can't be mitzi another tumtum, and it can't be mitzi a zochar. Androgynous mitzi yasminoi, androgynous can be mitzi another androgynous, but he can't be mitzi a man. Upshita de loya adifa ishim androgynous. A tumtum is a suffix zocha, suffix nekeva. His meal is covered up. He's a suffix zocha, suffix nekeva. Androgynous is a mixture. So we see from over here, an androgynous is more than a woman. He's a mixture, and still he can't be mitzi a zocha. He can only be mitzi another androgynous. So we see from here that a woman cannot be mitzi a man, because if a woman can be mitzi a man, kolshken androgynous could also be mitzi. Derech Agav, this has nothing to do with the Shiur. But once we're saying the Tosfos, it's an obvious question. Why didn't Tosfos bring a raya from the Reisha? Tumtum can't be mitzi another tumtum. What's the worst scenario? A tumtum is suffix zocha, suffix nekeva. Worst scenario is the tumtum that's laning is in a keva. The one that's listening is a zocha. And it says the tumtum can't be mitzi another tumtum. So that would be a raya that an isha can't be mitzi an ish. Because if an isha can be mitzi an ish, so why can't a tumtum be mitzi another tumtum? So on that, it's the Marshal's kasha. And the Cheshek Shlomo wants to say a pshat. I don't want to get too involved in it, but we have time to look. The Cheshek Shlomo says that in the Reisha, we could say that it's talking about a tumtum that was already yoitze. So a tumtum that was yoitze already, there's a machlokes Reb Kveg and the Noid Yehuda that if arvis applies to a woman. So if you hold arvis doesn't apply to a woman, so therefore, if the tumtum was already yoitze, now he wants to be mitzi another tumtum, on the tzad he's an isha, he can't be mitzi, because the isha has no concept of arvis. But in the sefer, we have a good raya, because the sefer can't be talking that the androgynous was already yoitze, because an androgynous can be mitzi another androgynous. If there's no arvis by a woman, so it has to be that the androgynous wasn't yoitze yet. So therefore, Tosfos brought a raya from the sefer that androgynous cannot be mitzi a zochar. Why can androgynous not be mitzi a zochar? Because an isha can't be mitzi an ish. And Tosfos makes a kal v'chomer. Madach androgynous can't be mitzi, who's a partial man, kol shkein an isha. So Tosfos has a big problem, and because of this, Tosfos makes a big turnaround. Now there are some Rishonim that hold Noshim could be mitzi an Noshim, but I mean it's very shver to Tosefta. So then he brings the famous Bahag. It says v'chein posek ahag the isha mitzi amino avol lo anoshim. An isha can be mitzi another isha, but not a man. So Tosfos comes out basing on the Tosefta that a woman can't be mitzi a man. And Tosfos says, so what's pshat in the Gemara and Erchen Akol Ksheira Lahoitzi Noshim? Till now we were learning the Chiddush is that a ish can be mitzi an ish. What's pshat now? So Tosfos answers, Al Kadaitach the Loyoel Kriyosam Afilu Lahoitzi Hanoshim. I would have me that a isha can't be mitzi another isha. Kamash Malon, The chayovim, the kol chayovim b'shmiya, everybody's mechuyev in shmiya, avodim noshim ktanim. So an isha can be mitzi another isha. And the Turei Oven is very, he doesn't understand what's the havamina. Isha shouldn't be mitzi an isha. What is the havamina? And they're very, very shver to him this pshat. So I want to offer a pshat, what Taisus means here, that maybe the chiddush that an isha can be mitzi another isha is the Bahag Yudua learns that women are only mechuyev in shmiya, not in kriya. That's the turnaround in Tais. Even though the mashmoyis hagemora is noshim chayovas mikra megillah, but mikoyach the kasha from the Teisefta, Tais says that women are not mechuyev in kriya; they're only mechuyev in shmiya. Therefore, legabe anoshim, a woman doesn't have the same chiyuv, so it can't be mitzi. The isha has no chiyuv kriya. There would be a havamina, maybe an isha can be mitzi another isha, because we need to hear the Megillah from somebody that's mechuyev in kriya. And Be'emes in the Mishnah Brura brings in Tov Reish Pei Tes. Mishnah Brura brings.
What's the other pshat why an isha can't be mitzi an isha?
We'll soon come to that. The Turei Oven wants to say a pshat that it's. I don't know any other pshat besides the Bahak. We'll discuss the Turei Oven's pshat. But that's the way it's ongoing. There's another pshat that noshim can't be mitzi and noshim al tzkov tzibur. That's brought in Mishnah Brura. But in Ber Heitiv it says, "B'medrash hanelam rus." I don't know who this is. A medrash hanelam rus Ber Heitiv. Kosav the leitikra la'atzman like tishmei anoshim. A woman shouldn't lay for herself; she should hear from a man. So would be mashman that it's not so poshut. So I wanted to say the chiddush like this, that the chiddush is that even though maybe you're mechuyev to hear from somebody that's mechuyev in kriya, it has to be after kriyas megillah. So you have to hear from somebody that's mechuyev in kriya. Kamashmal, and it's not like that. Now I want to give a dugma. It says halacha. We all know by shofar it's different. The mitzvah of shofar, even on a man, is l'shmaya kol shofar. The mitzvah is not the tkiyah, and it says that you can't be yotzeh of a mecher shaytav v'katan. Now, if the mitzvah is tkiyah, so he can be mitzi me in the tkiyah. But if the mitzvah is to listen to the kol shofar, why can't I be yotzei mecher shaytav v'katan? I'm hearing it. I don't have to be. He doesn't have to be mitzi me. And the chiyuv is l'shmaya, marshal kiddush. Kiddush, you have to say kiddush, zachar. So he has to be mitzi me. He has to be mitzi me with the kiddush. But shmiya, what does he have to be mitzi? So all the achrayim, the sasemes, the abneinez, all shtel zich on the kasha. And I think the sasemes, what he says is that a chayr shayt v'katan is not a tkiyah shofar. So nitkin tkiyah shofar. Since he's not in the parsha of tkiyah shofar, you're not hearing a tkiyah shofar. Not hearing a tkiyah shofar. So maybe there would be a havamin over here that you have to hear the Megillah from somebody that's mechuyev in kriya. Somebody that's mechuyev in kriya. That's who you have to hear the Megillah from. And that's kamashmal on that an isha can be mitzi an isha, even though the isha that's laying is not mechuyev in kriya. But since he's mechuyev in shmiya, that's called the kriyas Megillah. What I want to discuss here tonight, the Iker.
Why is that a kriyas Megillah? It's
a kriya because that's the way it's avegishtel. That's how Emerson she's hearing from somebody that's mechuyev in Megillah. Mechuyev in Megillah. Is what I want to discuss here. How is this split? Where do we get this that all of a sudden the isha should have a different type of chiyuv? The chiyuv should be shmiya. Where do we get such a zach? So where do you get such a spalt? So there's a famous marcheshes that deals with this, and the marcheshes says two mechudesh tiketerutzim. He wants to say that there's two chiyuvim in Kriyas Megillah. The two chiyuvim in Kriyas Megillah. There's one chiyuv in Kriyas Megillah that we have, that just like it's midaraisa, there's a chiyuv zocher as sheshasel chamalek. There's a chiyuv when we lay in the Megillah. There's a abundant chiyuv of zocher as sheshasel chamalek. We should remember what Amalek did to us. Zocher as sheshasel chamalek. And Memela, there's a chiyuv to lay in the Megillah not only as pursuing Isa, but also to remember what Amalek did to us. To remember what Amalek did. And he brings a Gemara that we're soon going to learn in the Daf, the beginning of the second parak, that it says, Kor al peh lo yotze. If you hear the Megillah, al peh, not in a Megillah, you're not yotze. So Gemara says, how do you know? Van Weisman, how do you know that if you're laying it from not from a klaf, that you're not yotze? So the Gemara says, In the Megillah it says, Vayomim ha'elin niskarim v'nasim. Very important. It says in the Megillah. Niskarim means Kriyas Megillah. Nasim is Sudas Purim, Shleach Monas. Vayomim ha'elin niskarim v'nasim. So Kriyas Megillah is Divrei Kabbalah. And the Gemara says, we learn out, it says, Ksoiv zoisi koren baseifa by Amalek. So just like Amalek says the Ksoiv zoisi koren baseifa, so Yom Ma'ela Niskarim and Nasim, Niskarim has to be baseifa. You have to lay the Megillah in a seifa. That's the din. Frekte Mercheshes, why are you learning it out from Ksoiv zoisi koren baseifa? It says, Zochar Siyam Shabbos L'Katsha. Kiddush doesn't have to be in the Sefer Torah. Kiddush can make from a Siddur. Why happens the Gemara is Medamid Tamolek? Is Muchach Zoktem Acheshes that Kriyas Megillah is incorporated into the midst of Kriyas Megillah is not only Persumei Nisa, no, it's a Rabbanan Dika Zeicher of Amalek. By remembering what Haman wanted to do, you're remembering Mechias Amalek. So therefore he proves from that Gemara that there's an inyan in Kriyas Megillah dot Tzvi dinim. One din we lay in Megillah al Tzafei Moyavoy Sanes, and another din is we lay in the Megillah because it's also a kriya for Amalek. So he says that the Bahag held like the Chinuch. The Chinuch holds that Noshim are not mechuyev in Zochas HaSha'as L'cha Amalek, mechudish dik Chinuch, even though it's a mitzvah Esa she'ein azman groma. And the Chinuch says that the reason is because Noshim, since they're not mechuyev in Mochei Timcha, because they're lab b'nei Mulchama, so therefore whoever's not mechuyev in Mochei Timcha is not mechuyev in Zochar. Mechudish dik Chinuch. So therefore, Noshim are not mechuyev in the kriya of Parsha Zochar. So Abazoi Zoktem Acheshes and Megillah there's two dinim. There's one din to lane the Megillah. The laning, the kriya, the chiyuv is because to remember Amalek. It's a rabbanan dika chiyuv of zikaron of what Amalek did. So that women do not have because they're lab b'nois mulchama. Just like they don't have the chiyuv midaraisa, they don't have the chiyuv midrabanan. But Persumei Nisa, since Afhei Moyavoy Sanes, so they were mechuyev in schira. So Kum T'chayis Isha only has the chiyuv of schira. For that is enough shmiya. For Persumei Nisa is enough shmiya. So therefore Noshim can't be moitzi anoshim because they only have the chiyuv of shmiya, but they don't have the chiyuv of kriya. They don't have the chiyuv of kriya.
And they would be able to be moitzi them at least in Megillah.
Yes, they would be moitzi in the Yenadin. And the din, that's very good because Cain Zeraturi often speaks. What happens if a man can't lay in the Megillah? Hadashka Megillah. He says so. He says that B'chai Gavna a Isha would be able to be moitzi an ish. He can't lay in anyways. He has nobody to lay for him. The only one that knows how to lay in the Megillah is a woman. You're out in the derfel there. The only one who knows how to lay in the Megillah. So B'chai Gavna, Shalom is Gerech, there'll be a tziyah that an Isha can be moitzi an ish because the ish has both dinim. So he can't be Yaitza Kriya because he can't lay in the Megillah. He has nowhere to lay for it. What? Because that Vivalta not mechuyev in Zochar. Because whoever's in Milchamas Amalek has a chiv of Zochar. Noshim alab b'nois Milchama. That's a chiv. Huh?
So it says
Niskarim, they're potter from. They're potter from Kriya and potter. They're chelik, they're potter. Yeah.
So why they need a about that?
What?
They should be able to do about that.
That part to be do balpeh. Good point. Good point. Good point. Good point. It's good order. Agudah was thinking the Turi oven doesn't go with this cheshbon. But the Turi oven doesn't go with this cheshbon. We could use the same cheshbon to ve'emfa the Mishnah Nerchen, the Gemara Nerchen, Akol Kshem Likris Magila, that there's a case where Noshim would be able to be Moitzi Anoshim. Be an answer on the kasha. The Turi Oven says Taisus on Mukhudish Dikapshat. That is a chiddush that a woman can be Moitzi another woman. Like this, we could say a woman can be Moitzi a man, where a man can't lay in the Megillah. There's only a woman to lay in the Megillah. The Turi Oven goes like that also. The Turi Oven learns Afay Moitzanes, we'll soon see, is a Mukhudish Dikadim Rabban. But anyways, that would be an answer that a Kol Shem Likris Magillah, that even a woman can be Moitzi a man in a case where the man can't lay, so at least they'll have the Chiyuv and Shmiyah. That's Mahalach Aleph. Mahalach Beis, he says, now it says a Gemara in Megillah, you probably had it already. Megillah says that why don't we say Halal on Purim? So one pshat in the Gemara, one pshat in the Gemara is the Kriyas Megillah is the Halal. The Kriyas Megillah is good for the Halal. So he wants to say Kum T'chais and Kriyas Megillah, there's two dinim. The Emek Brocha says this pshat also. There's one din, you lay in the Megillah al Halal, That's the halal. And there's another din, als Persuminis, als Nes. For that, he won't say it's enough Shmiyah. So therefore, a woman is not mechuyev in halal. It's not mechuyev in halal. So therefore, a woman can be mitzi a man in kriya, but in shmiyah she is mechuyev. So that's why she only has the chiyuv of shmiyah. Saying a moedik chiddush that the whole din kriya is only atz halal, and that women don't have, which also you could debate, because the chayot tzafei moisanes maybe they will be mechuyev in halal also, just like the mechuyev of leil pesach. Maybe.
That's the lashon of the Gemara.
Huh?
Zuhi Elasa.
What?
The lashon of the Gemara. Kriyasa Zuhi Elasa.
Right. The kriyas megillah is the hallow, and he's saying from that noshim apota. I'm saying it's not so posh that noshim would be potter from that. Und zweitens is another chiddush. Then at night there should be no chiv kriya. The way he's saying, there's no chiv halal at night. All right, but those are the two mahalchim. But you see, what is the Macheshes doing here? He's splitting that there's a Chiv Shmiyah and a Chiv Kriya, and he says that women don't have the Chiv Kriya, either because Kriya is because of Zochas Hashosel Molik, and that women are not required, according to the Chinuch, and therefore they only have a Chiv Shmiyah. And the other shot is the Chiv Kriya comes from Halel, and that they're not Mechuyev. Noshim are not mechuyev, it's Mr. Mangroma, and that Afei Boisanes wouldn't be mechayev them, only in Shmiyah. I wanted to offer another pshat. What?
They found out if there wouldn't enough that mahalach, if there wouldn't be a chiyuv of halal, they wouldn't have anything to do.
Right.
That's the whole.
Only al halal. Right. That's right. Halal.
She doesn't have a megillah.
What?
Like say, let's say someone doesn't have a megillah.
It's a shayla. It's a shayla.
We'll be muchach from this. That is a pseudin halal.
Shayla. I tell you, the Miri says that. The Miri says that if you have no megillah, you should lay in halal. As I said in Miri. But Rav Hutner said a murder to Gazachamol. Rav Hutner said, but nowhere is it bought in Paiskim, that if you have no Megillah, you should say halal. It's not the month in the Paiskim. So he said a murder to Gazach. He said that Purim is a Neis Nista. Purim is a Hester, Behester. So he says that the halal can't be B'Fahesya. The halal has to be in the Megillah. He says that's why there's no halal. Al Darkai. So I wanted to offer another pshat here. The Brisker Rav says there's a shayla in Shulchan Aruch here. Akol Ksherim Liks Megillah. So there's a Shulchan Aruch and Tov Reish Pei Tes. Says Hakol Chayovim B'Kriyasa Anoshim V'Noshim B'Geirim V'Avodim Meshuchrorim. Avodim Meshuchrorim is a complete yid. He's a Meshuchrodik Eved. They emancipated him. The Chiddush is that even though maybe his parents weren't Baisanas, but Avodim Meshuchrorim are Mechuyev. And that's Be'emes in the Machloikis, the Mishnah Berurah brings Avodim Meshuchrorim, Aval Ein Meshuchrorim Pturim. But an Evet Kanani is potter. We know the rule is that Evet Kanani has mitzvahs ke'isha. So why is Evet Kanani potter? We see an Ish is chayiv. So he says Greyim and Noshim. He's worse than Noshim. Then he brings a Yesh Oimrim that filu ein meshucharim chayavim. That even an Evet Kanani is also mechuyev. The Torah brings down both days. So the Machloikis, the Rambam Shita, the Mechaba, and Evet Kanani is not required in Kriyas Megillah, even though he's mechuyev mitzvahs ke'isha. In this one he's not mechuyev. And then there's a Yeshayim that Evet Kanani is mechuyev. So in Beis Yosef, in the Torah, says that's totally in the two terutzim of Taisvis. Taisvis has two pshatim in Afheim Boisanes. One pshat he brings from the Rashbam, that Afheim Boisanes means not only they were part of the nest, they were saved, but the Ikar HaNes was al Yodim. That means to be Mechayev them has to be Ikar HaNes al Yodim. Zok Taisvis, Bepurim al Yidei Esther, Bechanukah al Yidei Yehudis, and Bepesach shebeschus Noshim Tzidkani yesh ba'Isador Nigalu. So it's Ikar HaNes al Yodim. It's Taisus said Dingsach of them. Taisus says V'kosha, the Loshen she'afheim mashma she'im tfeilos, that they're a toffel. If you learn like the Rashbam, they're not a toffel faket, they're the Ikar in the Nes. So therefore he says L'kach nira she'afheim hoya b'sofik the lahashmid u'laharik. They were also in the Gzeir of lahashmid u'laharik. And that means Noshim were also in the Gzeira that Haman made, that Achashverosh made, lahashmin al-harig, alabed eskol Yehudim. So therefore, that's pshat nafhem mois hanes. Zok to Beis Yosef, if you learn ikar hanes hoyal yodom, then an Evet Kaini is going to be potter. That's these greyim in Noshim, because the ikar hanes wasn't through an Evet Kaini. But if you learn that afhem mois hanes, when the Gzeira lahashmin al-harig alabed, the Beis Yosef won't say that Evet Kaini was also in the Gzeira, because since an Evet Kaini Fietzach, he does mitzvahs ki'isha, he was also in the Gzeira. So therefore he would be mechuyev in Kriyas Megillah. It's totally, as I state in Beis Yosef. The Brisker Rav and Erchen says a different shot, and he really opens up the sugi here, the Indian of Afhem Mois Hanes. He declares a shayla, this that we have this concept of Afhem Mois Hanes, which applies to Chanukah also and Dalit Kaisis. Is the pshat, Noshim normally would be potter, even in the mitzvah Rabbana, and that's mitzvah Sheman Gom. So is the pshat that because of Afhem Mois Hanes there's no ptur? That means that we don't deal with it as a ptur. There's no ptur of mitzvah Sheman Gom. So it's a regular chiyuv they have of Kriyas Megillah because there's no ptur. Or Zokta Briskerov that be'emesin Noshim are Noshim be'emesin apota al mitzvah Sheman Gom. It applies. Mitzvah Sheman Gom applies. But there's a new chiyuv al Afhem Mois Hanes. There's a new chiyuv. So Mela Zokta Briskerov azay. If the pshat naniach Evet Knaini doesn't apply to him the Afhem Mois Hanes. He wasn't the Gzeira or it wasn't Ikar Hanes al Yodam, either way. But Lamaisa and Isha is mechuyev in Kriyas Megillah. So now we have a rule of thumb that Noshim are hukish to Evet Knaini is hukish to Isha. So because Afhem Mois Hanes they removed the Ptur Mitzvah Sheman Gom. So now Noshim are mechuyev in Kriyas Megillah like they're mechuyev in all mitzvahs Esa Shein Azman Grom. And that Evet is hukish Isha. Wherever a woman is mechuyev, there's no Ptur Mitzvah Sheman Grom, Evet Kain is mechuyev. That's the pshat, the tzad that Evet Knaini is mechuyev. But Dr. Brisker have another tzad. He says the be'emesin, the potter, mitzvah Sheman Grom applies. There's a new chiyuv because Afhem Mois Hanes. So that chiyuv only applies to a woman. She was Mois Hanes. But to Evet Kaini wasn't Mois Hanes. It's a new chiyuv. Kamat, we'll see the Turi Oven doesn't learn exactly like that, but he also learns that it's a chiyuv mechudesh.
Even if the Afhem Mois Hanes
doesn't apply to an Evet Kaini, then...
But the rule is that whatever...
the Noshim, you mean, Noshim. Even if there's a Ptur Mitzvah Sheman Groma, but there's a new chiyuv here because Afhem Mois Hanes. Because
the rule is Avadim also.
Right, but here it doesn't apply because here the pshat is it's only a new chiyuv al Afhem Mois Hanes. So this opened up to me the understanding of the Bahag. Where do we get such a zach, a split, that Noshim are mechuyev, but they don't have the same chiyuv as a man? The pshat is if the pshat is the Ptur Mitzvah Sheman Grom doesn't apply here. So then the Ptur is not here. So a woman has the same chiyuv as a man. To be like the Megillah, there's no Ptur Mitzvah Sheman Grom. So then Avada and Noshim would be mechuyev in Kriya. The Bahag held like the other tzad. The Bahag held that be'emesin their potter Mitzvah Sheman Grom. The new chiyuv because Afhem Mois Hanes. Als that new chiyuv, that's shmiyah. That means they don't have the same chiyuv as a man. They have a new chiyuv because Afhem Mois Hanes. For Pesume Nisa, it's enough shmiyah. It's enough shmiyah. I wanted to be makarver a little aseichel that it's a new chiyuv. There's a moedik chiddush in Aruch HaShulchan. I don't know if it's in Hilchos Chanukah and Hilchos Megillah. You'll check. He wants to say that according to the Bahag, you see, you don't have to have because of Afhem Mois Hanes the full mitzvah. You need to be in Aruch HaShulchan to be mechadish this. The Aruch HaShulchan says that according to the Bahag, it would be sufficient al Afhem Mois Hanes that Noshim could be yaitzu with Riyas Ner Chanukah. They don't have to have adlok. So I'm just saying to me, you see, they don't have the full mitzvah. As long as they have a shaykhis to the mitzvah. So that would be the pshat in the Bahag.
You still have the chiddush according to this side of the Bahag that if there's no one to lame, the isha could still lame for the man.
Right, could be the other din. Right, could be. Right, you have the same chiddush.
That what? That she
that if claims to have that other din.
That he also has afin.
Right. And you see the Turi Oven clause for Shaila. Turi Oven clause that maybe they only gave this extra din to somebody that didn't have the kriya. That's so state in Turi Oven.
That only an isha would have.
An isha has the afin, not the other. Right. Right. He's mesupik. But Itaka wants to say that to for the Mishnah and Erchin. To say Hakol Ksherim is that an Ish can be Moitzi and Ish in a case where he can't lay in the Megillah, so at least he'll have the other one.
So a man doesn't have Afein Hoya Bois Hanes, how could he be Moitzi and Isha? Hot is Yana Chiyuv. That's fake.
But could be they're hearing the Kriya. It's a new Chiyuv, a new Chiyuv, a new Chiyuv.
Okay, no, because
so that would be a riot to have both. That would be better than one shvat to have both. Okay, could be a Seistak Kriya. They're hearing a Kriya. I want to say there's in the second parak you'll soon be learning on the Mishnah Hakol Ksherim Likris Megillah. Take a look in Mishnayos. There's a Reb Kvega that the Shagasari, the Turi Oven, comes up with a new pshat. Turi Oven learns there's 3 madregas in mitzvahs. There's one madrega of something that's midaraisa. There's another madrega of something that you're mechuyev midrabanan, and then there's a middle madrega. It's not a deraisa, but it's more than a derabanan. It's called divrei kabbalah. Now the mitzvah of kriyas megillah is not in the Torah, but it's in divrei kabbalah. It's in Megillah Sesta. Vayomi mo'elin iskorim anasim iskorim zu kriyas megillah. So he says he wants to say that that's pshat in the Bahag. The Bahag learned that Noshim can't be moitzi anoshim. He doesn't like the pshat that Noshim only mechuyev and shmiyah. Where do you see that splits? He wants to offer a different pshat. He wants to offer that the pshat is that Noshim are potter from divrei kabbalah because mitzvah shema groma, but they have a new chiv mitzvah afhem b'sanes. There's another rabbanon. There's a sof in the mitzvah. There's a sofer that Noshim are mechuyev midrabanan because even though they're potter from the ikad divrei kabbalah they're potter because niskarim only applies to a man, to a woman mitzvah shema groma, and they're potter. They're gonna have a new chiyuv midrabanan. So therefore, an isha can't be moitzi an ish, just like somebody who's mechuyev midrabanan can't be moitzi somebody who's mechuyev midraisa. So who adin a isha that's only mechuyev midrabanan can't be moitzi a man who has a higher chiyuv of midirei kabbalah. And he says it's in between a deraisa and a drabanan. Streit Reb Kvega, versteht nicht the Turi Oven. The pshat nafay moisanes is that Afay Moisanes incorporates the Ish into the original Chiyuv. He says that it incorporates them into Yom Ma'ilin Eskorim Anasim. And he has a raya from Toisim Psochim. Toisim Avi Psochim on the Sugyos Noshim Chayovois Barba Koises. Toisim asks, why aren't Noshim Mechuyev als Afay Moisanes in Sukkah? Zeichel Anani Akovet, there was also a Nes. Why aren't they Mechuyev in Sukkah? And for Taisvis, that Afay Moisanes only applies to a mitzvah drabanan, does not apply to a mitzvah deraisa. Azoi steht in Taisvis. Learned up Reb Kvega. What's pshat in Taisvis? Why does it only apply to a mitzvah drabanan, not a mitzvah deraisa? Learned up Reb Kvega that Afay Moisanes definitely is a rabbanan concept. It's not midraisa. There's no concept. So midrabanan, what did they do? Because of Afay Moisanes, they put them in the original chiyuv. So it doesn't apply to sukkah. Because since Afay Moisanes is not the Raisa concept, they can't put them into the original mitzvah of Sukkah. So therefore, Noshim are going to be potter in Sukkah. That's how I learned the Taisus. But Vaistais, the Turi Oven learned up not like that. And Be'emerson, I don't understand Reb Kvega. I always had a shver that L'chayra, he doesn't say Chansu that Taisa Megillah is not like Taisa Sukkah. Taisa Megillah and Dafdala that we're dealing with. Taisa Sakasha, why do we need a posik? By matzah, a hekish, that whoever is mechuyev in chometz, kol mishi yeshne b'bal teichel chometz yeshne b'chol mechol matzah. Special posik that a woman is mechuyev to eat matzah, because whoever is in the lav of eating chometz, it applies to him the mitzvah matzah. Teipach le'atzafay moisanes. Means Taisa HaRav, mean Afay Moisanes the rice, and he has one teretz of Taisi goes like that. And for Taisvis, that at Afay Moisanes you'd only be mechuyev in matzah midrabanan. But I need the hekish to say mechuyev midraisa. It would only be at Afay Moisanes then they only mechuyev mit Rabbanan. So I need the hekesh and mechuyev mit Reise. Das steht mefurish nicht wie Tois and Arvi Psachim. Then Hodra Kushel Duchte, why are Noshim not mechuyev and Sukkah? You need a teretz for that. You need a teretz. Could be because there is a meferish Amir of Ezrach. But Tois is saying clearly that the pshat is that even though they're potter from the deraisa, they can be mechuyev al tzafim in a sense. They can be mechuyev with Rabban. So you see, they don't have to be incorporated in the original chiyuv. So that's like the Turi oven. That's like the Turi oven. Meduchsach hadis shaila, and that's why I want to use the Turi oven here a little bit with this briskerov to answer the whole Indian.
Sounds like the Turi oven with Rebbe Kiveg is the Tut Stodem of the briskerov.
Right, exactly. Tut Stodem over here. Turi oven Rebbe Kiveg, exactly. That's what it's on. The Turi oven, the briskerov held, Rebbe Kiveg held, like that sad, that Afay Moisa Nes takes off the Torah of Mitzvah Shemagrom. It doesn't apply. So therefore they're in the original Chiyuv. That's what it does. So they're Mechuyev in the original Chiyuv. So therefore, they're Mechuyev even with Divrei Kabbalah. Then we have a problem. Why can't an Ish be Moitzi an Ish? The Turi Oven held that the Pshat is that they're potter. They're potter for Divrei Kabbalah. They were Moisev and Chiyuv. They were Moisev and Chiyuv. Al Tzafay Moisa Nes, there's a Hisof of a new Chiyuv, and that Chiyuv is only with Rabbanan, and that's what the Torah Oven goes into. If a Ish also has that Chiyuv, he goes into the whole Nin. So I want to take that over here and apply that to the Bahag. He disagrees with Bahag. I said, once you go with that Anocha, that they're potter from the Mitzvah Shemang Grom, and could be that's the Machlokes the two Taisus. Taisus in Arbi Psochim that said, Noshim are not mechuyev in sukkah because it only applies to a mitzvah rabbanan. They hold Afay Moisa Nes only incorporates you in the original chiyuv, and it can't incorporate you in the deraisa. But Taisa Megillah held not like that. That even if there wouldn't be a hekesh, women would have been mechuyev with rabbanan. So you see, it's a new chiyuv. It's a naya chiyuv. So could be according to that we can understand that if it's a naya chiyuv already, it's not the divrei Kabbalah, then it leaves us a space to say that the chiyuv is shmiyah. It's Moedik Shver. Where do we get a space? So I want to use that. The Turi Oven is actually saying it already, is leading me to that it's the potter from the Divrei Kabbalah, but there's a new Chiyuv Rabbanan. So that Chiyuv Rabbanan could be Al Tzafay Moisa Nes, but that it's enough Shmiyah. We see that he wanted to say to Aruch HaShulchan that it should be enough Riyas Ner Chanukah for a woman. So Mamela, we have a teretz over here, Pshat, why we could split that Noshim only have Chiyuv Shmiyah. So I wanted to go another tchot here, another step. The Behetiv Fanot brings down.
Who was masakin it though? This is Mordechai who based in on masakin it. It sounds like it should be with Divrei Kabbalah.
The Rabbanan were masakin it.
Rabbanan has to get Agudah.
I don't know. Loshon Acheres, they were keveya that even Noshim are mechuyev. Al Tzafay Moisa Nes.
Mordechai based in, I didn't say it, but the next.
No. Could be they established that right away. Could be they established that right away.
The distinction between the Kabbalah and the Rabbanan right away.
There's a quality stick in the Rabbanan. No, there's a quality stick in the Rabbanan of Afinoy Boishanis.
Cannot be.
There's a quality stick in the Rabbanan. It's not a the Rabbanan in Megillah.
You see, in Dalakos and Chanukah, Reb Shlomo is saying they're good.
There's a quality stick in there.
So there's a sheet over here. Shita Behetiv. Behetiv says in Tofresh Pei Tes that a cotton shigiyah lechinuch can be mitzi women. A cotton shigiyah lechinuch can be mitzi women. By Megillah. Now, a woman can be mitzi a man. Let's go. A woman can be mitzi a man. A cotton can be mitzi a man in Kriyas Megillah. Why not? Cotton's mechuyev. A cotton shigiyah lechinuch is mechuyev mit Rabbanan. So why can't it be mitzi a man? So Taisa Shita and Daf Yutesam and Beis is because a cotton needs two Rabbanans to make him chayiv. Number one, Megillah is midrabanan, and Chinuch is midrabanan. Masha'en Kain, Ish only has one Rabbanan. So two Rabbanans is a lower level of Chiyuv, so he can be Mitzi. He can be Mitzi a Godel. So why can a cotton Shigiyah Lechinuch be Mitzi and Isha? So I saw Be'emes, the Torah doesn't deal with this directly, but he also says could be an Isha's two Rabbanans. If you learn Afay Moisa Nes is a new Chiyuv Rabbanan, a cotton is also Trade Rabbanans. But Lamaisa, I'm saying the way the Bahag learns is Poshet. If you learn there's a new Chiyuv in the Rabbanan, that Chiyuv is Shmiyah. So Lamaisa, a cotton Shigil Chinuch can't be Mitzvah Anish, because the Chiyuv is Kriya. He can't be Yaitza with Shemaya Kaina from somebody that's only to the Rabbanan. But what's the Isha's Chiyuv? To hear the Megillah. To hear, she's hearing a Kriyas Megillah. A cotton Shigil Chinuch is not like a goy would learn the Megillah or a monkey would learn the Megillah. He has a Kriyas Megillah, even though his Kriyas Megillah, he's only a trader Rabbanandika, but Lamaisa, it is a Kriyas Megillah. I don't want to be Myrich now, but it's Muchach. There's one sheet that a cotton Shigil Chinuch can be Moitzi the house in Chanukah. One sheet. Because the Pshat is it's a Chiv on the bias. It's a Chiv on the bias, as I stated in Sfat Semes, as I stated in Chacham Tzvi before. So even though cotton doesn't have the same madrega of chiyuv as a godel, but it is a hatlokas neiris. So I want to say pshat nebehetiv is you go with the bahag, a cotton shigel chinuch can be mitzi anisha, because a isha only has a chiyuv shmiyah. So you don't have to be mitzi. The cotton doesn't have to be mitzi. You just have to hear it. So a cotton shigel chinuch can be mitzi. Yeah. So I wanted to say one more shlav. The Ran in Megillah, speaking about this thing which you'll soon have, this cotton shigil chinuch, there's a machloikis in Megillah. If a cotton shigil chinuch can be moitzi a godel. Rabbi Yehuda, the Gemara says in Yud Testament Beis, Hakol Shem Likus a Megillah chutz michayer shev the cotton. Rabbi Yehuda machsher bekotten. Chayer sheita not. But he holds a cotton could. A cotton could be mitzi. So Taisus goes that Rabbi Yehuda didn't hold this thing that a two Rabbanans can be mitzi echad Rabban. Kum te Ramban. So the very Yisoid is the Gezach. The Ramban says, these are Shiur b'fnei atzmei, but the Ramban goes with Shitas Rashi that the reason why a cotton can't be mitzi, a godel in Kriyas Megillah, is because a cotton doesn't have its own chiyuv. It's his father's chiyuv. He has no chiyuv. It's incumbent upon his father to train him. But he has no eigen chiyuv. And that's why Rashi learns, even though Rashi Shita is a chiyuv d'Rabbanan, can be moitzi a chiyuv d'Raisa, but a cotton can be moitzi a godlan birchas hamazon. Even though the Rabbanan can be moitzi. Zokt Rashi, because a cotton has no chiyuv. It's his father's chiyuv. Zokt Ramban. So what did Rabbi Yehuda hold? Rabbi Yehuda held that a cotton shugil chinuch could be moitzi. So he says because afay moibay sanes, that's why it's different. Shraita ran, because afay moibay sanes, but lamaisa cotton is not mechuyev. Afay moibay sanes, you can be mechayev an isha, a bar chiyuva, but a cotton, how can you be mechayev a cotton? So I want to say it's totally in this machlokes that we're speaking about. If the pshat is that afay moibay sanes only takes up the tour mitzvahs man groma, so then a cotton, there's no chiyuv here. So cotton has no chiyuv. Like all mitzvahs, he has no chiyuv. And that's what the Ram was claiming. What's going to help over here? It's the father's chiyuv, not the cotton's chiyuv. But here what I want to say. But if you learn Afay Meisanes is a new chiyuv, doesn't go with the normal parameters. It's a new chiyuv. So then a cotton, because he was also in the Gzeir of Lashman al-Harag, so here he has his own chiyuv. He fought a cotton about that.
He's a cotton.
He's a cotton.
No,
he's a cotton.
No, but it's a
yeah, but I want to say over here he's going to have an egg in it then. It's not going to only be the father's chiyuv. Not going to only be the father's chiyuv. Shaf's an egg and a chiyuv. Let me read the Lashon here. Not that it'll help that much, but the Lashon of the Ran. It is a cooked on about the Zen. Zokte Azoi. This is the Ramban. Zokte Ramban. Rabbi Yehuda Atzmai lo hitte bekotten ale Megillah nay only by Megillah. This should call Meisanes. And that the Ran shrais. What do you mean? Zokte Ran. So lo shayach l'ma'ida havi b'achiyuv. Somebody it's b'achiyuv. We see always it's not a b'achiyuv. So I want to say it's a new din. It's a new chiyuv that applies even to a cut.
If he's 12 and a half, he was by Sinas, but when he was 7, he wasn't.
Right. What? By what? By what?
When he was 7 years old, he wasn't by Sinas.
No, he
was by Sanes. He was by Sanes.
He was. Why when he's poches made by chinuch, he doesn't have afin by Sanes.
That's not shaykh. It's not
in the parsha.
Not about that.
I'm
supposed to say some divrei Agudah. Okay. Schuldig. The Ilam was very nice in the Shia. Pleasure. One to speak. It says that one of the Chumash, there's one of the Kinyonei HaTorah, Chamisha Chumash HaTorah. One of the Kinyonei HaTorah, one of the Memches Dvarim ShaTorah Niknas Bahem, is Noisei Ba'olam Chaberei. Is that a person should be Noisei Ba'olam Chaberei, feel somebody else's pain. I wanted to explain why is this such an important thing, Noisei Ba'olam Chaberei, to be a Godel B'Torah, to have Torah. And we see Taka the G'dolei Olam, Reb Chaim Moiser, but carried Klal Yisrael on his shoulders. Reb Aaron Zechet Tzaddik Avrach, people don't know the tremendous Noisei oil that he had, how he speaks about it in his Svar. So by Emerson, I wanted to explain it like this: that the Indian of Noisei Ba'olam Chaberei, we find as a grace and in this week's parsha says, Vayigdal Moshe Vayar B'Siv Loisam. The Torah explains the godless of Moshe Rabbeinu. They don't say about his Torah. They say Vayar B'Siv Loisam. Some ein of a liboy liyos meitzra aleim. He didn't only, Rabbi Yerucham the Mir Mashgiach says, he looked and he was mizbainen in that tsar. And he says that he carried bricks on him. He was sitting pretty in the house of Paroi. He was a prince. And yet he belittled himself to start carrying the avonim. He felt the pain. And he was mechuyev to be mizbainen in Yenes tsar, to feel it, to be margish it, and it can only be through his baininess. Think what Yen is going through. Just heard from Nissen Kaplan, he didn't know what it means. Yosem and Alma until he lost his own wife. We have to have that koyach to see what Yen is going through. And we see it in the Eibishter, Alain. That's the end of Parshas Mishpatim. Mir Mashgiach also brings this out, how important it is. And by the Rebbeinu Shalom, with Mechuyev Alachta B'Drochav, the Noisei Ba'oil of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, it says in this week's Parsha, he saw as Oni B'nai Yisrael, Ki Yodati es Machoivov, I understand their pain. And the Eibishter understood it better than the Yidden understood it themselves. Because it says a person is a Oisha, then he becomes an Oraman. With the time, he gets used to it. He doesn't remember so good the glory days. The Eibishter remembers Klal Yisrael in its full glory by the Ovis. So he feels the Machoivim even stronger. And it says here, Moedidika Rashi at the end of Mishpatim, it says that Moshe, the Eibishter had a livnas hasapir. V'yiru es alakei Yisrael. B'tachas raglov k'maisa livnas hasapir. So Rashi, k'maisa livnas hasapir, that means he had an Evan. The Eibishter had an Evan. I'm going to quote the Rashi in Posek Yud. K'maisa livnas hasapir. He hoisel a fona b'shas hashibud. He had a tzigel. He had a brick. Liskar tzarosam shel Yisrael she'ayim meshubodim. The Eibishter Alein had to have a brick to remind them of the Shibud of Mitzrayim. So Noisei Ba'olam Chaberei is something that we have from the Rebbeinu Shalom. I want to ask a question. Reb Aaron says a Moedik Azach. It says by Matan Torah, Yishalach Moshe es Chosnoi. One shot is that he sent Yisro away after Matan Torah. Yishalach Moshe es Chosnoi. He sent them away before Matan Torah. There's many pshatim. The Medrash says, "Vos epis Yisro came to Matan Torah. Vashanim vos Klal Yisrael is what they're going to get to receive the Torah." So it says in the Chazal, "Leiv yoideya moras nafshe." It's a posik in Tanakh. Leiv yoideya moras nafshe b'simchosa lo yisarav zor. A person knows what's krenkt him, and in his simcha lo yisarav zor. A person knows. Sometimes the doctor doesn't know. Come to the doctor, you complain, then you find out the patient knew. And oich da mensch that has a tzora, efa shteit leiv yoideya moras nafshe. When he finally gets out of that tzor and he makes a Suda Seidah, a zor shouldn't get mixed in. Somebody that was mishtatif b'tzayroi, he can be part of it. So therefore, Yisroi didn't go through the whole Korah Barzli, he didn't go through the Shibud Mitzrayim. And it's Yodua that everything that Klal Yisrael went through the Shibud Mitzrayim was to make a zichuch, to make them totally clean and pure for Matan Torah. There had to be a certain purity that a person had to reach for Matan Torah. And therefore, since Yisroi was not part of the Shibud Mitzrayim, he didn't have to go through that ordeal of the Inui, HaKoshim that they had, he couldn't be Matan Torah. Stellt sich HaKasha. Moshe Rabbeinu wasn't part of the Shibud also. So that you could say it was a manik. But more difficult is what with Shevet Levi. What's with Shevet Levi? So Moshe Rabbeinu, I want to say, we see in the Torah, he was Mishtatev V'tzach Haver, he was Nosan Eina V'liba Elias Meitzer Aleim. He was the lawyer for Klal Yisrael. At the Mamish, he hit the Mitzri. You see, he didn't just sit in the house. That he could have been not made himself nish wissendig wegen the ganze Shibud. Moshe Rabbeinu felt the tsar. He felt it like Klal Yisrael Aleim. So Memela, that's like being part of the Shibud. When you feel Yenes Sar, Rabban brings down somewhere Chazal that you mechuy to get crank. And that's why sometimes a Tefillah Tzaddik helps, because he has the same tzorah. If he gets involved in that tzorah, he has the same tzorah. So what's with Shevet Levi? So I want to share with you a Mordika Shalah and the Kumadika Voch Sedra. The Shalah says, I'm quoting, it's mamish the beginning of the Parshas Veira. Eila Roshei Beis Avosim B'nei Ruvain, they reckon B'nei Ruvain, B'nei Shimon, Be'eila Shmois B'nei Levi. By Reuven, it doesn't say Eila Shmois B'nei Reuven. It doesn't say by Shimon Eila Shmois. By Levi, it says Eila Shmois B'nei Levi. Loma Amateva Shmois Eitzel Levi. Yosim Yimash Oma B'Reuven Shimon. Reuven and Shimon, it just says B'nei Reuven, B'nei Shimon. Also on here, Eila. This is Eila Shmois B'nei Levi. You look at it, there's a beautiful sipurin about it, but he says a different shot. Inyan hu. Ki shevet Levi loy hoye begolus. They were in the Golus Mitzrayim. V'Levi yoda dovazeh. Levi knew this. And he wasn't in the Shibud, but his brothers were in the Shibud. V'rotza li shtatei b'tzoras hatzibur. He wanted to be mishtatei b'tzoras hatzibur. Ma'asa kar shemes l'bonav al shem hagolus. Dainu shem Gershon al shem ki geirim heim ba'oretz loy lahem. They're geirim in a land that's not theirs. He called his other child Kahos al shem shineim keis. The teeth were chattering from the tzorah. V'shem Merori al shem v'yimoras chayeim. Ve'ela shmois b'nei Levi called them to remind themselves of the tzorah of Klal Yisrael. Umikan yilmer ha'odam lishtatev b'tzar hatzibur afal pi she'en hatzira magas loy. Person should be metatev in tzar hatzima even though the tzor is not magas loy. B'chein oidi Hashem l'zborach l'Moshe Rabbeinu in this week's parsha. Eka she'eka eyimon in this golus. I'll be with them in a different golus. But then the second time when he told it over to Yisrael, he said only one time eka, because don't tell them about the future golus. I don't want to be mitzayah them. It's enough golus mitzrayim. So he says the chiyuv shtatus. So Ibazoi is good. Shevet Levi, even though they weren't the actual Shibud, but they felt that sort of Klal Yisrael. So you see that the Indian of Noiseb Olam Chaber. This week's Parsha, this one to conclude, it says that Mi Anoichi Ki Elech Al Paroi. Who am I to go to Paroi? V'chi Oitzias B'nei Yisrael Mi Mitzrayim. And the Eibishter answers him, Ki Ei Yimoch B'zel L'cha Ois Tavdon l'skim tach zohor hazeh. Tavdon l'skim v'zel l'choyos ki nechish l'ticha b'yitzichos ami Mitzrayim Tavdon l'skim tach zohor hazeh. So Rashi says he asked them two kashas. He asked them, how am I important enough of a person to go to Parai? Question number two is, what schus do they have? And that he answered him, al rishon. He answered him, why you choshev? Yimach, I'll be with you. V'zel l'choyos, that I'll be with you is the snare. The schus of going out, what schus is there going to be Matan Torah? The Briskerov says, the Rambam says a different shot. He learns that out of the Rambam. You'll take a look at it. Briskerov says that it's no hemshech here. The ois is the snare, and then we're going to a new thing. The Pashtas HaPosek is mashma zelecha ois is Matan Torah. So the Brisker Rov learns another pshat, al pi Rambam, that he asked, Mi anoichi ke'elech hapari. The Eibishter said, Ani v'loi malach. I'm going to take you up. And the Eibishter b'kvoid ba'atzmi is going to take them out. So he's asking, Mi anoichi ke'elech hapari. You said, Ani v'loi malach. So the Eibishter told him, Ki ei yimach. Ei yimach is shchina medaberes mitoch roinei. L'kom k'moshe novi. The only novi that had that clarity, that mamish kamat, that the nevuah came out from Kutshi Berich Alein, that shchina medaberes mitoch roinei, was Moshe Rabbeinu. And the proof of that is Matan Torah. Because Matan Torah, they saw the Eibishter Pel Peh Adababoy. Matan Torah was the ois. That was the ois that Moshe Rabbeinu gave out the Dvar Hashem. Vaspaklari Amira. That was the ois. They saw upon him. Einenu ro, Vasnenu shomu. The way Moshe Rabbeinu was speaking Pel Peh HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So that was the ois, and that was the raya. That not Moshe Rabbeinu took us out, no, the Shechina medaberes mitoch groinoi. The Reb Chaim Volozhin says that the Yisoid, when Moshe Rabbeinu was the Moshe HaTorah, was because of his anova. Be'ish Moshe anu mikol adam, he was mevatel all the mechitzas gashmias. Shal na'alechem al rachlecha, he removed all the gashmias. Ad kedei kach, the Meshech Chochmah says, b'cho yaminu la'olam, he became like a malach alakim. He became mamish kulei ruchni. He worked out his gashmi to be a ruchni. And that's why he was zoichet as baklari amira. Because anivus, when you have the anivus, you see everything clearly. So we understand that anova is an ikr in Kabbalah Satayr. Anova, when a person anov, he sees the emes. He's not meshuchid. He looks for the emes, and he mevatl the zich. I want to say, and I think you would share this with me. A happy person is somebody that's not always thinking about himself. Somebody that's always busy with himself. Somebody that's a noisy ba'olam chaveris, thinking about somebody else. He's not so self-focused. He's a happy person. The yisoid of being mavatel the anoichi is the noisy ba'olam chaveri. When you're talking about a tzveita, and that's what's Moshe Rabbeinu, that's mavatel the anoichi, the zich. You become part of Klal Yisrael, and then you can be the Mekabel HaTorah. She'll be zeicha in these sedris, and you may shave them to learn up the lessons of Yetzias Mitzrayim. I just want to end off with something I heard from a gift that says in this week's parsha, so he asked, what's v'lakachti eschem lom? We understand what's v'lakachti eschem lom in support of Matan Torah. So yes, first by Matan Torah we found out we were saying from the Brisker Rov b'Shem the Rambam, that's when we found out. When did they know it's anoichi v'loi malach, that Moshe Rabbeinu was ki'ilu kabayachal himself? Matan Torah was that ois that the Eibishter was the one that takes us out of Mitzrayim. It says in the Gula Asida, the Eibishter is going to take us out himself on a shliach. We should be zoichet to that zman of the Gula Asida in these days of the Shovim, the Golas V'Agula. It was Bemison a great pleasure saying the shir.
Very good. Straight back to yeshiva.
Okay.
Very good. I said here in the Psachim, it says Rabbi Yehuda says, "Tinoikis amachuyev."
Yeah. The